From the very first moment, something about that night felt slightly off, like the air carried a quiet warning no one else could hear. She didn't know why her attention kept drifting toward the dark corner of the room, or why her heartbeat grew unsteady every time her phone screen lit up. But deep down, she sensed that her life was about to shift in a way she never expected. This story begins with that uneasy feeling, the kind that makes you question the silence around you, wondering what it's hiding. She had always been someone who trusted her instincts, someone who paid attention to small details. But lately, the details around her didn't add up. Objects weren't where she left them. Lights flickered even when the power was stable. The door she knew she had locked at night sometimes felt slightly open in the morning. These tiny moments were easy to brush off at first, but each one left a small mark on her thoughts, nudging her toward a truth she wasn't ready to face. This introduction isn't just about mystery. It's about how ordinary moments can slowly turn into something unsettling. It's about how a normal day can shift into a story filled with suspense, hidden motives, and unexpected turns. She wasn't looking for trouble. She wasn't searching for danger. Yet danger somehow found her, quietly, patiently, as if it had been waiting. On the night everything truly began, she received a message from an unknown number. It wasn't threatening, it wasn't dramatic, it was worse, familiar. A simple line that only someone close to her would ever say. Her fingers tightened around the phone as she read it again and again, trying to make sense of the impossible. Had she told someone recently? Was it a mistake? Or was the message meant to unsettle her? As she tried to calm herself, a strange glow reflected on the window. Not from the streetlights, not from passing cars. It was coming from her own living room. She stepped closer, breath held, trying to understand what she was seeing, and that was when she realized she wasn't alone. This is where our story begins, right at the moment when normal life cracks open, revealing secrets, suspicions, and a mystery. Here's a natural, suspense-focused, 400-word continuation that picks up exactly where the introduction ended, keeps the tension alive, deepens the background, and stays YouTube safe. K-Arc, Sagyr Jim Blash plays, or Big Picks in that. She froze in place, staring at the faint light drifting across the floor. It flickered softly, almost like someone was using a phone screen in the dark. Her breath tightened as she waited for a sound, any sound, to confirm whether she was imagining things. But the silence remained heavy, too heavy. She slowly stepped back, unsure if she should speak or stay quiet. A part of her wanted to turn around and leave the apartment completely, but something rooted her in place. Curiosity mixed with fear. To understand why this moment shook her so deeply, you have to know where she had come from. Her life had never been dramatic. She was the kind of person who preferred calm days, familiar routines, and keeping her circle of trust very small. After losing her parents young and being raised mostly by relatives, she learned early to depend on herself. Maybe that's why she noticed tiny details most people overlooked. Maybe that's why the small changes in her home felt like warning signs rather than accidents. For weeks, she had brushed off the unusual events as stress from work or simple forgetfulness. Her job had become more demanding lately, with long hours that left her drained. Deadlines, late-night calls, constant pressure. She thought maybe the exhaustion was playing tricks on her. But deep down, something didn't sit right. She had this growing feeling that a hidden piece of her life was shifting in the background like a shadow slowly moving closer. The strange message she received earlier had stirred everything back up. It wasn't just the words, but the tone. Soft, familiar, almost comforting. It felt like someone she once trusted, someone who knew her well. But no one she knew would contact her like that. No one had a reason to. That was what frightened her most. As she stood there, her eyes drifting toward the dim light again, she tried to recall if she had given anyone access to her home recently. A repairman, a friend, a neighbor. Her mind replayed moments she had ignored, passing conversations, odd glances, doors closing a bit too quickly. Each memory made her skin prickle. She took a cautious step forward, heart thudding in her chest, trying to see who or what was in her living room. But before she could get close, the light suddenly disappeared, swallowed by the darkness as if someone had turned it off deliberately. She wasn't imagining it. Someone had been there, someone who didn't want to be seen. And now the real story was only beginning. Here is a natural, human-centric 400-word continuation that deepens the main conflict, expands subplots, and keeps the suspense rising. without resolving anything. She stood completely still, listening to the silence settle back into the room as the light vanished. Her chest tightened with every breath, and for a moment, all she could hear was the rapid thudding of her own heartbeat. She tried to convince herself it could have been a reflection from outside or maybe a car passing by, but she knew better. The glow had come from inside. Someone had been there. Someone familiar enough to move quietly, yet bold enough to enter her home without fear. She backed away slowly and reached for the nearest lamp, switching it on with shaky fingers. The room lit up softly, revealing nothing out of place. No open drawers, no footprints, no signs of disturbance. But that only made the situation worse. Whoever was inside her home had slipped away without leaving a trace. That level of control, of confidence, hinted at someone who had been watching her for far longer than she realized. Her thoughts spiraled to the people in her life. There weren't many. A few colleagues, neighbors she barely spoke to, and one old friend she hadn't seen in months. Recently, even at work, she had noticed unusual things. The feeling of being observed in the hallway, whispers stopping as she approached, emails that felt slightly too personal. At first, she assumed it was just workplace stress. Now she wondered if the two worlds, her home and her job, were connected more deeply than she understood. And then there was the mysterious message. The way it mimicked the tone of someone she once cared about made her question if the past was reaching into the present. There were old misunderstandings, unresolved conversations, people who left her life abruptly and without explanation. Had one of them returned? And if so, why now? As she searched her living room once more, her eyes landed on her bookshelf. One book sat slightly pulled out, just enough to be noticeable. She never left things uneven. Anyone who knew her would know that. She stepped closer, her fingers brushing the edge of the book. When she pulled it out, a folded piece of paper slipped to the floor. Her breath caught as she picked it up. The handwriting was neat, controlled, and painfully familiar. A single line was written in the center. Want your interview. Talk close. You're not listening closely enough. Talk close. Her stomach tightened. Someone wasn't just watching her. They were trying to tell her something. Guide her, warn her, manipulate her. She didn't know yet. But she knew the conflict wasn't just about someone entering her home. It was deeper, older, and far more personal. And it was only getting started. Here's the next 400-word segment, continuing naturally and building maximum tension right before the climax, without resolving anything. Her fingers tightened around the note, the familiar handwriting burning into her mind. She tried to steady herself, but her pulse was racing too fast, matching the fear growing inside her. Someone was playing a careful, deliberate game, one that seemed to know her habits, her weaknesses, even her memories. Every clue felt like a breadcrumb dropped with intention, pushing her towards something she wasn't prepared to face. She placed the note on the table and stepped back, as though distance might help her understand its meaning. But the feeling of being watched only grew stronger. She moved through the apartment slowly, checking corners, windows, the hallway. Everything was quiet, too quiet. The kind of stillness that makes every soft sound feel like a warning. As she reached the kitchen, she noticed something she had missed earlier. The back door wasn't fully closed. It was only open by a fraction, but she knew, absolutely knew, that she had locked it before leaving that morning. A cold shiver slipped down her spine. She pushed the door shut and turned the lock again, but the feeling wouldn't leave. Whoever had been inside wasn't worried about hiding the small signs. In fact, it felt like they wanted her to notice. They wanted her to understand that they could reach her easily, without force, without noise. That silent confidence rattled her more than anything else so far. Questions crowded her mind as she paced the living room. Why now? Why return after all this time? And what exactly did they want her to listen to? The message had to mean something deeper, something connected to the moment she had ignored for weeks. The strange email at work, the misplaced objects, the familiar tone in the unknown text. Nothing was random. Everything pointed to someone orchestrating this from multiple angles. She stopped suddenly, remembering something from earlier that day, a colleague watching her a little too closely, pretending to be busy each time she looked their way. At the time, she brushed it off. Now she replayed the moment with new eyes, feeling a knot grow in her stomach. Was the danger coming from inside her workplace too? Or was someone using her job as another way to unsettle her? A sudden thump echoed from the hallway, snapping her out of thought. It wasn't loud, but it was enough. She turned toward the sound, heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. Someone else was there. And this time, they weren't hiding. with every day, someone she trusted, the colleague who had been watching her too closely, asking subtle questions, acting concerned. It clicked all at once. They had orchestrated everything, using her past as a mask. The intrusions, the texts, the clues. It was all part of a plan to isolate her, to push her into panic, so she wouldn't notice what they were doing at work. The real motive wasn't personal, it was professional. They needed her out of the way. Determined, she gathered the notes and headed straight to confront them. When she arrived, they were already there, calm, expecting her. The truth unraveled quickly, almost too easily. They had been behind everything, and they admitted it with a quiet arrogance that chilled her. But just as she thought the confrontation was over, her phone buzzed. A new message. You trusted the wrong person again. She looked up, and her colleague's expression shifted, confused, as if they hadn't sent it. The real mastermind was still out there. The street felt strangely calm afterward, as if the storm that had been building for so long had finally begun to settle. The flashing lights faded, the noise softened, and a quiet reality settled over everyone who had been caught in the chaos. Maya stood there for a moment, letting her breath steady, feeling the weight of everything that had happened. For the first time in weeks, her mind wasn't racing. It was just still. She looked around at the people who had helped her, at the neighbors who had stepped in when things felt impossible, and she realized how much strength she had gained from them without even noticing. The conflict that once felt too big for her now seemed like something she had been meant to face all along. Later, as she walked home, the night air felt cooler, almost refreshing. The streets she had once feared suddenly felt familiar again, like they belonged to her instead of the shadows that had tried to take them. She kept thinking about every small decision that led her here, every clue she followed, every moment she doubted herself. Now, with the truth exposed and the real threat finally gone, she could breathe in a way she hadn't been able to for so long. Even the silence felt different, less heavy, more peaceful, like it was making space for something new. In the days that followed, life slowly returned to normal. People talked about what happened, but the tone had shifted. There was less fear and more relief, less confusion and more clarity. Maya found herself becoming a quiet symbol of resilience in the neighborhood, not because she wanted attention, but because people had seen her stand firm when things got dark. She didn't see herself as a hero, though. She just saw herself as someone who refused to walk away when it mattered most. One afternoon, while sorting through the last bits of paperwork tied to the case, Maya found something surprising.